Who is the bravest kid in America? First of all, I've been watching this dude videos with y'all. His channel is absolutely addictive. Bro, we finna binge watch. If you like this journey, be sure to like the video and subscribe. We turning up! I'm gonna keep it calm. My back hurt. I don't know if it's my kidney or my liver. Where your liver at? That ain't nothing I'm supposed to be asking the subscribers. Never mind. Intro!
Yeah, you never flew private plane, now your eyes open wide up in Paris. Yeah, you ain't never been from the coast on a yacht to an island. Yeah.
Dr. Baldwin, Mr. Baldwin, talk to us. Tell us, well, who is the bravest kid in America? I'm excited about this story. I'm excited because it's just the thumbnail got my attention. I guess that's how it's go, bro. I'm a YouTuber that's looking for YouTube. Wow. It's all in one. It's like the Matrix. Here we go.
As you listen to today's absolutely epic story, remember the main character was a child when all of this happened. A child.
A kid.
But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan...
I love to hear super kid stories, bro. That's like one of my little weak spots. It's like, I cried on the Titanic. I cried, I ain't gonna even lie, man. This was last week. And I watched, last week I was crying on the Titanic. But, damn, Mr. Baldwin, tell us, man, the kids, when kids do something special, it just means more for whatever reason. Let's go.
And of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel, because that's all we do, and we upload 2 or 3 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please continuously maneuver your vehicle right in front of the like button's car on the highway,
like it,
and then turn on your blinker, but don't change lanes.
What about
also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
I'm on it.
All right, let's get into today's story.
Bro, this is like the perfect things to do in between music releases. If not, man, I just be doing random stuff. Bro, we could do these right here. Then when people drop songs, bam, we on it. Bam, just like that. Bam, bam, bam. Sorry if I'm loud, Naomi. Bam. Come on, sorry. Bam.
In 1937, the Japanese declared war on China and invaded their country. The United States, who was friends with China, initially did not intervene in fear of...
We was cool with China? Because they chipped, boy. Trump and them didn't like China. All right, here we go.
The United States, who was friends with China, initially did not intervene in fear of provoking Japan. But after the Japanese murdered hundreds of thousands of unarmed Chinese civilians and the Japanese attacked an American warship, the United States was forced to step in. American officials responded to the Japanese aggression by placing serious economic sanctions and trade embargoes on Japan, believing this would cripple their war efforts in China, causing them to have to retreat. However, the sanctions and embargoes did not have this effect. Instead, they just angered Japan and made them even more...
Well, the Chinese people are cool with me. I've never been to China, so I don't know. I don't know nothing about the government. I don't know nothing about nothing. Xi Jinping, I don't know nothing. I don't need you canceling me. I'm going to rewind this because I got a little bit off track. I said too much. I mess with Chinese people. I've never been to China. I don't know how China is. But the people are cool with me. That's all I can say.
War efforts in China, causing them to have to retreat. However, the sanctions and embargoes did not have this effect. Instead, they just angered Japan and made them even more determined to hold their ground in China. Over the next few years, the United States and Japan attempted to negotiate some sort of settlement, but neither side would make any concessions, and so neither side would budge. A few years later, on the morning of Sunday, December 7th, 1941, the Japanese launched a surprise aerial attack on the American military base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. After the 2-hour attack was done, over 2,400 Americans were killed, with another 1,000 wounded, and 300 airplanes and 20 ships were either destroyed or significantly crippled. The Japanese had hoped this attack would goad the United States into lifting the sanctions and embargoes they had placed on them from back in 1937. But instead, all the Japanese did was goad the United States into all-out war with them.
Man, I don't know about American history good because it's been a little twisted. But, man, what did you think was going to happen, man? We're not going to relitigate that, but why? You shoot up my house, man. You come shoot up my crib, and you like, man, come on, fam. All right, now I'm going to give you my pizza now. You done shot me. Man, no! Ain't no pizza. Pizza's been flooded. Blood is on it. Boy, stop, breathe. That's old news. We all getting along now. Give me a hug. World hug. World hug. All right.
These sanctions and embargoes they had placed on them from back in 1937. But instead, all the Japanese did was goad the United States into all-out war with them. One day after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States officially declared war on Japan, thus entering World War II. On the day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor...
Who was that president? President Robert De Niro. That's President Robert De Niro. Damn!
On Japan, thus entering World War II.
On
the day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, Jack Lucas, like every other American in the country, was glued to his radio listening to the news. He was devastated and shocked at this carnage he was hearing about in Hawaii. And so by the time the President of the United States was declaring war on Japan, Jack had already made up his mind that he was going to join up and he was going to fight for his country. However, there was an issue. Jack wasn't old enough to join the military. You needed to be 17 years old, and Jack was only 14. But this was not going to stop Jack. So he created this fake document that said he was 17 years old, and he forged his mother's signature on it.
Man, dude looked like every damn high school football player that's the best on the team. He in every sport. He looked like a hero, bro. I'm not even trying to do that, bro. But if you look at the guy, he just looked like the typical picture of a hero. That's what got my attention on even doing this reaction. Go ahead, Mr. Ball.
This fake document that said he was 17 years old, and he forged his mother's signature on it. And then, after bribing him, he got a notary to sign off on this document as well. And so Jack took his forged documentation, he gave it to the recruiter, and before long, Jack was accepted into the armed services and was on his way to Marine Corps boot camp. After completing initial training and becoming a Marine, the Marines found out Jack's paperwork was actually fake.
They found out after boot camp and stuff. He don't look 14, boy. Boy, back in the days, they used to go through something. We're going to get to the story, but whoa, boy, you look like you already done had, he like he is on his second relationship right now. Shouts out to him, man. Back, they raised him different then. Boy, at 14, you had already been divorced 4 times.
But instead of kicking him out, the Marines found out Jack's paperwork was actually faked. But instead of kicking him out of the military, they said, Jack, you can stay in, but under one condition. You can't go overseas to combat. You have to stay in the United States. You can drive a truck and help out around here, but you can't deploy and go to war until you're of age.
He done snuck in the luggage.
Jack was not happy about this, but initially he did as he was told, and he did just drive a truck around and support it as best as he could. But after about a year and a half, 2 years of this, Jack just couldn't do it anymore. That was not why he had forged this.
I bet money he snuck in with the soup. Either he snuck in the soup meals, or he stuck in right. Some way he done snuck in some luggage. I bet you.
Document to get into the military. He had done that so he could actually go fight in the war. And so finally, when he was just 16 years old, he abandoned his post and snuck onto the back car of a troop transport train that was going to another military base. And so when he arrived at this base, which was in California, he hopped off and then ran to the docks where there were these big warships. And he saw one of them, there was a whole bunch of troops loading onto it. And he figured, that's where I need to go. And so he snuck onto the ship and he hid down below. And then after the ship took off and was out to sea, he revealed himself and he walked up to a Marine officer and he kind of played off the, oh, I must have got on the wrong ship, but now that I'm here, can I join your unit? And this officer, who had no idea how young Jack was, eventually said, okay, but prepare yourself because we're going to invade Iwo Jima.
Wow.
And Jack had never heard of Iwo Jima and did not know its significance. But frankly, Jack didn't really care. He was just glad that he was actually going to see combat. What Jack couldn't have known, and what the other Marines on the ship couldn't have known either, is that the battle for Iwo Jima would become one of the bloodiest and deadliest battles of...
Oh my God, Jack! Boy, what you got? Boy, Jack, what you got yourself into? What up, people? You ain't got no Nintendo. Y'all ain't had a Nintendo. You ain't playing Roxum. No, y'all had some 5 rocks. Y'all ain't playing Roxum. Come on, Jack. But you're a hero. That's why you're a hero. Most people wouldn't do it. If it was easy, you wouldn't be a hero.
Battle for Iwo Jima would become one of the bloodiest and deadliest battles of the entire war. The Japanese that were on this island defending it were absolutely fearless and would not surrender despite being outnumbered, and they were heavily entrenched in these caves and tunnels built in all over the island, and they rarely left these caves and tunnels, which meant Jack and the other Marines, when they landed on this island, the only way they could fight the Japanese was by literally crawling down into these tunnels, which were usually booby-trapped, and fighting up close and personal with the enemy. Jack's ship arrived off the coast of Iwo Jima in February of 1945 when Jack was still 16 years old. On February 19th, the first wave of Marines climbed down the side of this big ship down onto these smaller amphibious landing crafts, and then one by one they began making their way towards Iwo Jima to begin the invasion. Jack was not part of this initial invasion. He would be going out on day 2 with the second wave of Marines. And so Jack and all the other second wave Marines just stood at the front of the ship and watched as these amphibious crafts made it up to the beach and then just got completely gunned down by Japanese machine gunners that were lining the beach. And so by the second day, when Jack and the rest of the Marines are getting ready to launch their assault, there are literally thousands of dead Americans just lining the beach. But Jack and the other second wave Marines, they knew this was their job, this was their duty, and so they were undeterred. They climbed down the side of the ship, they boarded their amphibious landing craft, and began the journey towards the island. As they got closer, the Japanese machine gunners opened fire not only on Jack and the boat he was in, but all of the crews that were coming towards the beach. And so hundreds of Americans were just getting gunned down before they even reached the sand. Jack and his crew managed to get to the beach, and so as the gate dropped on their boat, and as Jack is running onto the beach, the men around him are just getting cut to pieces by these machine guns. Jack manages not to get shot, and he, along with 3 other Marines, run up the beach and they lay down in front of the sand dune that protected them from these machine gunners. Jack knew he couldn't stay there for very long because the Japanese were also firing artillery shells onto the beach.
So man, the Japanese, boy, y'all was ready. Man, goddamn, what? Who? Did y'all have Bill Belichick? Y'all got Bill Belichick? What is y'all doing to us? I know this is over. I know this is over, boy, but I'm Mr. Barber, why you tell me when I'm watching the movie, man? I'm seeing it, man. They shooting them. Stop shooting everybody. Oh, Lord. Boy, man, they had Bill Belichick. This wasn't fair, man. They gave us Steve Spurrier, man. Spurrier against Belichick. Spurrier was G, though. Spurrier good. He good. He was fired, but man, Belichick. I don't even like the Patriots, but man, he got Belichick. Come on, Jack. I'm back. Man.
Because the Japanese were also firing artillery shells onto the beach, and so it would just be a matter of time before he was blown up. And so Jack and these other 3 Marines that had arrived at the same time, they began moving north, doing their best not to get shot or blown up, stopping behind rocks and trees and jumping behind sand dunes. And after a couple hours of doing this, the 4 of them reached the airfield at the northern end of the island. And when they get there, a machine gunner inside of a pillbox. A pillbox is like a small concrete fort that only has openings on 3 or 4 of its sides that are just big enough for a machine gun to poke through. A machine gunner inside one of these pillboxes notices Jack and the other 3 Marines, and they open fire on them. And somehow, Jack and these other 3 Marines managed to not get shot and were able to maneuver and then fire through one of those openings and take out the machine gunner inside. And so now that this gunner is down, Jack and the others see the opportunity to take run forward and take more ground.
I thought they was going to take over the machine. Well, I guess you were sitting duck then.
Of this airfield, and as they're running, other Japanese soldiers in the general vicinity, they see them, they start opening up on them from other pillboxes and other locations, and it forces Jack and these Marines to just jump into the nearest trench to avoid getting shot. And so they're jumping into a Japanese trench, which is a deep hole dug in the ground to protect yourself from getting shot. And as they jump in there, they're expecting to see Japanese soldiers coming towards them, but there weren't any soldiers. But they knew they couldn't stay there for very long because eventually Japanese soldiers would come through here and then they'd get killed. And so they quickly decided their best bet was to basically get out of this trench and run towards the pillbox where they knew they had taken out the machine gunner. And
I just can't. I could be a commander. The moment he realized I could be a commander. What was my first mind, y'all? Rewind me. I said that. Take over that and do. That's how I shoot. Don't criticize the form. Man, I just said that.
Trench and run towards the pillbox where they knew they had taken out the machine gunner inside, so they could actually take that pillbox for themselves. And so their plan was they would run towards it and stop inside of each of the trenches along the way to protect themselves, because they know there are other Japanese that know where they are. And then once they get to the pillbox, they can regroup and call in reinforcements. And so one of the men Jack was with said, okay, I'll go first. And so he climbs out of his trench as the Japanese are shooting at him, and he sprints about 10 or 15 feet until he gets to the next trench on the way to this pillbox. And so Jack is watching as this guy jumps into this trench, and as soon as he disappears out of view, this Marine is immediately turning around and scrambling to get back out of the trench, and he's trying to run back towards Jack and the other two Marines he was with. It would turn out this guy had jumped into another Japanese trench that was full of Japanese soldiers.
Wow.
He'd actually landed on top of an actual soldier. But these Japanese soldiers were so caught off guard by this, they didn't have time to react and shoot this Marine before the Marine was able to scramble out and get back to Jack and the others.
That's dope.
And then for the next several minutes, Jack and these other three Marines opened fire on these Japanese soldiers in this trench like 10 or 15 feet away. And these Japanese soldiers, they too opened fire on Jack and the other three. Jack was able to take out two of the Japanese soldiers before his gun jammed. And so he ducked down into the trench to work on his gun. And as he's down there, he notices there are two grenades on the ground right next to him. And so without any hesitation, he yells, "Grenade!" to the other Marines, and then he jumps on top of them, smothering the grenades with his body.
No.
One of the grenades was a dud, and so it didn't explode. The other was not a dud, and it went off. The way a grenade works is there is a small piece of explosive that is inside of metal housing that's usually spherical, and this metal housing is the thing you actually hold on to and throw when you throw a grenade. And so when this small explosive is triggered by pulling the pin and releasing the spoon, it detonates and it causes the metal housing itself to be ripped apart and sent flying. Basically, when a grenade goes off, it's like having hundreds of pieces of jagged metal shot off in every direction that are all traveling roughly at the speed of a bullet or faster. And so naturally, a grenade up close is incredibly lethal. In fact, the kill radius of a typical fragmentation grenade is about 5 meters. When the grenade under Jack that was not a dud exploded, it sent Jack flying into the air, and then when he came back down again, his comrades saw him and they could see he was clearly devastated from all the fragmentation that had been pumped into his body. And so they assumed he was dead. But even if they thought he was alive for some reason, there was nothing they could have done to have helped him, because they were actively being engaged by dozens of Japanese soldiers that were only about 10 or 15 feet away. And so eventually, these three other Marines that Jack had just saved.
He the best storyteller of all time. Man, you telling movies, Netflix gonna sue him. Oh, man. Mr. Ballin, you ain't let, boy. Copyright, just get yourself out of Netflix. You better than Netflix, fam. Why am I disengaged in this, man? It's from 1935. Man, I'm in here like this was 2021, man. This happened in July. Man. Ballin'. You ballin'. Ballin'. Oh, man.
15 feet away. And so eventually, these three other Marines that Jack had just saved were forced to leave Jack where he was and retreat back to the beach, and they would all live. The Japanese soldiers in the trench that they were fighting against would eventually come into Jack's trench, but most likely when they saw Jack laying there just completely ruined from this grenade, they assumed he was dead, and so they just kind of left him there. But Jack wasn't dead. He just couldn't speak, and he couldn't see anything, and he really couldn't move, although he could wiggle a few fingers on his left hand. And so for hours, as he lay there in agonizing pain, in and out of consciousness, he just wiggled the fingers on his left hand, hoping an American would see him and know he was still alive. And you gotta figure, this whole time, it is just constant chaos all around him. His chances of survival are incredibly slim. The idea that an American is gonna find him and be able to evacuate him is almost zero, and he must have known that. But by some miracle, eventually another American unit did find their way into Jack's trench, and they did notice him wiggling the fingers on his left hand. And so they were able to evacuate him from the trench down to the beach, and from there, under the cover of darkness, they were able to bring him out to a hospital boat offshore, and there he would begin the first of 26 major surgeries to remove the grenade shrapnel from his torso, his arm, and his face. Despite his grievous injuries, Jack would surprisingly make a full recovery. And 8 months after his injury, the President of the United States would award him the highest decoration for bravery, the Medal of Honor. He would be the youngest recipient of this award since the 1800s, and to this day, he is one of only a handful of miners to have won this award. Following his departure from the military, Jack would survive a near-death experience while skydiving when both of his parachutes, his main and his reserve, failed, and he just smashed into the ground, but somehow lived. He would also survive a very bad house fire, and he would survive an assassination attempt on his life by his ex-wife. And so
if you my Uber... Jack, I love you, man. You're definitely a hero. And I'd like to thank you for the service that you provided our country. I appreciate that. But I also would like to recommend, me and you never ride together. It seemed like it's just something about your luck. You're good and you're brave, though, but I don't need to see bravery. I got shit to do tomorrow. So thank you, man. Wow, that is crazy.
Naturally, he titled his memoir Indestructible. Jack would eventually die of natural causes on June 5th, 2008. He was 80 years old. So that's going to do it, guys.
He made it to 80?
On June 5th, 2008, he was 80 years old.
Wow. He don't have a normal story at all.
So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's episode, let us know in the comments section.
That's crazy, man. What do you think about that story, man? Leave it in the comments. Y'all don't leave comments. If you look at the video, if you see it and you don't leave a comment, 30 years of, I can't do you like that. Leave a comment. That's good enough. Man, damn. This dude tell the best stories, bro. We finna binge watch some of this. Hey, man. Because, hey, I'm curious. I got a few more geared up. Make sure y'all turn on the notifications. I got some more of these about to drop. I'm watching a lot of his and some more like him because y'all leaving me recommendation. Who else is like him? Man, leave it in the comment, bro. We up out of here. Outro!
Yeah, you never flew private plane. Now your eyes open wide up in Paris. Yeah, you ain't never been from the coast on a yacht to an island.